I'm David Bradshaw in the philosophy department, and I appreciate a chance to talk with you all at CSF. I really believe in what you're doing here, and I've seen the effects of it already on campus. I have a lot of students who are active in CSF. So far as apologetics goes, I can just tell you a bit about my own history. I became a Christian when I was 16. I was raised as a believer, but not very intensely. I have to admit I didn't really know what I believed as a Christian. And around the time I was 16, I read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And I found that just a life-changing book. If you've read that book, you may remember the first 5 chapters are an argument for the existence of God. And it's an argument based on morality. And Lewis's basic idea is that all of us recognize the power that morality has upon us in some respect. Now, most of us rebel in some ways. Most of us may reject certain moral ideas or claims. But anytime you say that someone has treated you unfairly, or that you deserve such and such, or that what someone did just wasn't right, you're recognizing the authority of morality. And Lewis asks, where does that authority come from? It can't just be our own creation, partly because we recognize it impinges upon us despite what we want. And sometimes even what we strongly want, what we passionately desire, we recognize can be morally improper. And so, again, you need to read the book, but he says the only source of that authority ultimately has to be God. And when I read that, it opened up to me not only the truth that God is real, but, if you will, the truth that God has a kind of a presence within the deepest level of what I think and what I feel. Because moral questions and the question of how should I act and what kind of person should I seek to be are some of the most important questions any of us ever face. And Lewis reveals that when you ask those questions, you're really asking about God. You're really asking, who is God? What does He desire of me? And how can I achieve that? How can I seek Him in my life? So it was that realization that opened up to me what apologetics really can do. It can, at one level you might think of it sort of as stocking your quiver with arrows, arming yourself with arguments that are valuable, that are useful in confronting skeptical doubts, in confronting a largely unbelieving culture. And that's all true, and that's important. But my first experience really was at a more personal level. I wasn't concerned with convincing anyone else. I was concerned with, well, what do I believe? And who is this God that I say I believe in? And it was that argument by Lewis that really began to open that up for me. And of course, if you've read Mere Christianity, he goes on to describe what Christians believe, what moral virtues Christians seek to practice, and in particular, the other real high point of that book, to my mind, is his argument about the person of Jesus Christ. And this is a famous argument, I'm sure you've heard it. He says that when you read the Gospels, you cannot honestly conclude that Jesus was a good man who just happened to be wrong about a few minor things, such as who he really is, because he claimed to be God. He claimed the authority that only God has to forgive sins. And in fact, he said, unless you are willing to turn away from your father and your mother and your sister and brother and follow me, you're not worthy of me. And Lewis points out those kind of words from anyone else will be recognized as the words of a megalomaniac. And so Jesus in the gospel presents us with a fundamental choice about himself. Either he's lying, he's claiming to be someone he's not. He's a lunatic, he's simply insane. He has these megalomaniacal ideas about himself that are false. Or he's Lord. Liar, lunatic, or Lord, the famous trilemma that Lewis poses for us. Well, just as the moral argument had if you will, opened up to me what the questions I've been asking really were about. That point Lewis makes about Jesus in the Gospels opened up to me the Bible. It opened up to me the Gospels as about someone who's not just a moral teacher, not just a prophet, not just a miracle worker, but God in the flesh who challenges each of us to recognize Him as who He is and to respond with our worship and our absolute obedience. And once I read those pages in Lewis, and again, that's an apologetic argument, but I wasn't worried about convincing anyone else. I needed that argument to understand who I am as a Christian and who Jesus Christ is. And once I had read that, there was no turning back. And from that point on, you might say I was working to be a philosopher. It took years. I did other things. I have a physics degree. I worked in science for 6 years. I taught science in high school for a while. But all that time, I was reading philosophy. I was reading authors like C.S. Lewis, G.K. Chesterton, another great one, trying to get deeper into the Christian faith, if you will, from a philosophical perspective. And that's, in a nutshell, that's what I think apologetics does. It draws you deeper into the faith and not only enables you to be rooted as a Christian, enables you then from those roots that you have to speak to others. And that's how you should think of the arguments that you learn. They're not clubs to beat someone over the head with, but they are lights that illuminate who God is, who Jesus Christ is, what we believe as Christians. And with that understanding, you're able to speak to people in a way that you couldn't otherwise. So I just want to encourage you to pursue these studies. I think it's a wonderful thing. And if I can do anything to help you, I'm on the 14th floor in Patterson Tower, and I'd love to meet you and talk with you. Thanks.